I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your huckleberry.
Why, Johnny Ringo. You look like somebody just walked over your grave.
Fight's not with you, Holiday.
I beg to differ, sir. We started a game we never got to finish. Play for blood, remember?
I was just fooling about.
I wasn't. And this time, legal.
All right, Lunger. Let's do it. Say when.
This is Dueling Pistols, where history draws first and legends never die. No fluff, no filters, just raw stories of grit, blood, and legacy. Triggered by Black Flag.
Why'd they eat the dude's heart?
The Indians?
Yeah.
Take his power? I don't know.
Again, if you didn't know any better, if you didn't have science behind you, it makes sense. I'm just saying.
Hey, come on, dude.
It makes sense.
Why did Jeremiah Johnson eat crow liver?
Because he was dying. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping for. He needed sustenance. Because Brian knows he's that crow up there. Good eating. No one's ever once thought that. If you have a crow on your plate, you've made poor life decisions or life's gotten really rough.
Crow Indian.
Oh.
Crow Indian liver.
Oh.
Like the human livers.
Well, if I had to eat a person, Brian, I would imagine the liver's probably the safest thing to eat on that.
Okay, look, all I'm saying is I think it was vengeful. That's why I did it. It was to prove a point, perhaps to take their power. The liver was a sort of a sacred part of the man, and he's like going to desecrate it in a way. So yeah, and I don't know, scares the hell out of people, and there's some nutrients. It's a superfood.
Yeah, I think all of those things are true.
He's half animal.
And if he just happens to gain power...
I've never seen a dog that didn't like liver, so...
That's true.
They just freaking are rabid for it. Look, I like liver. Always have.
Nope.
Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Brian Call, and today I am joined by my brother, Brent Call. How are you, Brent?
I'm well, thank you.
Good, good, good. We are getting right back into the book where we left off. The book is called Boone, a Biography, written by Robert Morgan. And we just heard in the last episode that Lord Dunmore's war, which was really some Indian skirmishes with settlers and such. In that story, we heard about how Boone was sent over to Kentucky to rescue some surveyors and dudes who were over there kind of figuring out, plots.
Two things can be true, Brian. He can be going there to save people and also be able to figure out where he's going to live next.
Yeah, and he was asked by the powers that be, the politicians, to go
on your rescue mission. Take this 200-pound gunter chain with you. You're going to need it,
and get me some land.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's been surveying land as well. There's disputes. It does look like, though, he did conduct the survey crew back into one of the crews back into Virginia and so on. So anyway, here we are. We're jumping into the story where we left off. And Lord Dunmore's war is over. And now that it's over, everybody's like, okay, let's run to Kentucky. Let's run to Kentucky and get the West and settle the West, Richard Henderson is no longer a judge. He's a politician dude who's wealthy and rich. And he's not a judge anymore. And he's free to, just invest. And he's kind of had his fingers in Boone's business for a while now. And he somehow, we don't know how, he gets in touch with Boone and says, hey, let's go get some of that Kentucky land.
It's weird how these politicians don't seem to make a lot of money and then they get out of office and they have all this money. It seems like nothing ever changes.
Well,
Brian.
I think back then, these were all well-to-do lords and so forth, and people who had wealth and means when they came to America, and then they still have wealth and means. So back to the book, though, it says, you're forbidden to go to Kentucky. The colonels of North Carolina and Virginia had forbidden anyone to try to buy or sell or settle Kentucky, claiming the land belonged to the westward extending colonies Pennsylvania had a similar warning. Like they all were like, hey, nobody buy this stuff, and it's ours, or it's part of this land here where we're at, and all this kind of stuff, right? Meanwhile, just certain states are just doing whatever the hell they want, and people are just going in anyway. And it says that Henderson had a plan, okay, to get through all of this stuff. Because the other issue was, hey, the Indians, it's their place. We agreed to stay here. This is their stuff. Peace is settled. And Henderson is like, well, here's the deal. What if we buy it from the Cherokee? Okay, now, the Cherokee issue is laughable because the Cherokee weren't really the ones who owned most of Kentucky anyway. They're the least ownershiping group of Indians of the area to begin with, right?
Is it just because they're on the best of terms with those guys?
I just think we'll get into it. But basically, the Cherokee don't really have much claim to the land because they don't really live there and hunt there as much as the Shawnee or the Iroquois or the Six Nations. You have all these other Indians who have a much greater claim on that, but Henderson's not going to buy it from them. He just needs a piece of paper that says he bought it from the Cherokee. He's just looking for a pretense to move in and stake it out and call it his, right? And he's basing this on some legal thing that happened before where somebody bought some land, and so he can just say, well, it seems reasonable to me based on this case if he gets challenged at all.
Yeah,
right?
and I'm sure the Indians are going to see his side and back down quickly.
So it says, Richard Henderson was a brilliant, ambitious, resourceful man. He had already gone over the heads of the colonial governors and consulted the government in London. Lord Mansfield gave Judge Henderson the sanction of his great authority in favor of the purchase. The letter sanction was duly sent, a true copy made in London, April 1st, 1772, and was transmitted to Judge Henderson. It was all a charade, since the Indians referred to in the document were of India, not North America.
Wrong kind of Indian.
Whatever the claims and warnings of the crown governments, surveyors and settlers and hunters and trappers, scouts and speculators were pouring into Kentucky by the day. Most came down the Ohio from Fort Pitt, but others traveled through Cumberland Gap from the south and over the mountains from Virginia down the Big Sandy and Red Rivers. In April 1769, Pennsylvania had opened a land office at Pittsburgh and had 2,790 applications for western lands the first day.
Dang.
They came from all directions. Some even approached Kentucky up the Cumberland River from French Lick, headed to the cane lands and clover bottoms of the bluegrass region. I mean, as soon as Dunmore's War was over, it was like the dam burst. The whole
Could you
issue.
imagine being a Native American, hunting in a spot, coming back a year later, and there's a town? What that would do to you?
The whole issue of the settling of Kentucky was a confusing and exciting mess. One of the groups establishing a claim in Kentucky was the McAfee brothers, who came early in 1775. In February, the McAfee brothers, James, Robert, William, and Samuel, and their associates had already gone into Kentucky to clear land and plant crops. The Cherokee claim to much of the Kentucky country was marginal at best. Like other tribes, they had roved everywhere on the warpath, and they had done some hunting on the edges of the Great Meadow. But most of their hunting was done to the south and east of the Clinch River, south and east of the Tennessee for that matter. After all, the Cherokees had the Great Smoky Mountains to hunt, and they also had the long Blue Ridge chain and the valleys in between extending from Virginia to Alabama, and so on. You get it, right? They didn't really have a claim here, and the documents that Henderson gathered were from his connections in England, from the crown. So he consulted all his, people in power there, and they gave him some documents based on Indians that then he could just kind of twist into a legal document for this location and say it was approved. And then he can run in and he can buy the land from the Cherokee, and then he can say it's ours. And so that's what he does. According to Boone's conversations with Filson 8 years later, Henderson commissioned Boone to perform two main tasks. First, he was to use his acquaintance with the Cherokees to persuade them to gather at Sycamore Shoals on the Watauga River in March 1775 to ratify the agreement with Henderson's Louisa Company. Since Boone knew the Cherokee country better than almost any other white man, was respected among the Indians as a formidable scout and hunter, and was trusted. His job was to give credibility to Henderson among the scattered towns along the Little Tennessee, Oconaluftee, and Tuskegee rivers. Whew. Henderson knew that people, both Indian and white, trusted Boone and tended to follow his advice and leadership.
I don't think the people that named these rivers and valleys were concerned with trying to spell them. Because otherwise, I doubt there would have been a lot more of Smith River, John's Mill kind of a thing going on.
Oconaluftee and Tuskegee, those definitely were Indian names, right?
Yeah.
Like, the second task of Boone's assignment was to hack a trail out of the wilderness through Cumberland Gap into the promised land along the Kentucky River. He just needed to make a path. There's no way for a road, but a path adequate for pack horses and riders clearly marked would serve. Rivers and creeks would still have to be forded and canebrakes threaded through, but such a road would strengthen the claims to the Kentucky land. Henderson and Boone understood that such a road was a necessary and practical thing, but it was also a psychological and symbolic effort. Whoever opened a road into the wilderness already had a superior claim on the land. Building a road, establishing access to a region was, from Roman times, an expression of acquisition and ownership. Emperors were road builders. No one would ever, again, think of a region just as Indian territory once a road had been opened into it. Roads, Brent.
I can see
Roads.
that. I can see
it's
that.
It's like railroad.
Yeah.
And it's like, once you have a road, there's no stopping people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, oh, that's ours. I mean, that's where we go. That's our place.
If you can increase the speed of travel, you change humankind.
The thing is, the reality is right now, the way that it works is whoever takes it gets it. That's true for the Indians or the white people. That's it. Like, whoever sort of rolls in and takes it gets it. And there's some verbal agreements, some backed up by the threat of violence, that this is our place and this is your place. And if you step over here, you know, that's a problem for us. Let's maintain some peaceable negotiations here, but don't piss us off and we won't piss you off. And all of this, nothing though is formal, written down. Nothing is in stone, and it can change next week. It's all based on who decides to take it and who has the strength to keep it.
I was going to say, it sounds to me like a little Midas right running around. I mean, like, you might have been first, but it's still mine, bro. Like,
you might have been first, but then the people before you were first, right? Like, that's not a reason to, especially in these times. It's not a reason. The fact that you have it back at that point wasn't like, first of all, who has it? That's the question, right? There's not even, no Indian will agree that so-and-so has it like it's theirs, okay? All Indians will agree that you can't just have it permanently as an owner. That's weird. But none of them will agree that, oh yeah, that's the Cherokee's land right there. Or that's the Iroquois. You know, that's the Shawnee, that's the Delaware. No, they're like, well, it's theirs right now.
I'm very happy to be there.
Nothing is more telling of the contradiction of Boone's thought and his life than his role as architect and surveyor of what some would call Boone's Trace, or later the Wilderness Road, or the Transylvania Trail, or the road to the settlements, etc. If he valued the pristine wilderness of Kentucky, the endemic beauty, the exhilaration of the solitary hunt, he should have been the last man willing to open a way through which settlers would spill in and ruin his paradise. Following that side of his brain, he should have been concealing the route into Kentucky and telling others it was impossible to get there. But there was the other side of Boone's mind also. Not only was he a hunter and a trapper who loved solitude in the wilderness, he was a sociable man with close ties to friends and hunting companions, and he was a family man with strong and affectionate bonds with a large extended family. His wife, his siblings, his cousins and nephews and nieces and in-laws looked up to him, depended on him, followed him, and waited for him. It was his duty to provide for them and lead them to a better future. And Boone was a man of his era also. He was at times susceptible to the dreams the dream of power and wealth in the West, the unlimited opportunity, the clean slate, the beckoning future beyond the mountains, and destiny that seemed just within grasp over the next ridge as some other men. Same as other men. In Boone's time, it was understood to be a man's duty to clear land and open roads to let the light of civilization and churches into the threatening wilderness. A real man dammed water and led streams to turn grist mills and power the bellows of a blacksmith's shop, built schools and cleared away the briars and drained swamps, killed off the wolves and panthers and the rattlesnakes. Boone was, in part, a man like other men of his time. He felt the call to do what was expected of him. He could build a cabin in a day or two with nothing but an axe. He could clear land and build a fort. He could find a road and blaze the trees and clear them away, and he could inspire others to do the same. If he was not able to reconcile the two sides of himself, to think through the contradictions and conflicts implicit in his acts and ambitions, Boone was not alone. In fairness, it must be pointed out that with over 2,000 miles of wilderness extending west from North Carolina to the Pacific, it may not have occurred to Boone or anyone else in 1775 that those regions could ever be so quickly settled and tamed. To Boone and his contemporaries, the wilderness must have seemed infinite and infinitely challenging. It would be a few years before he saw how fast the forests could be chopped down and the game destroyed. No one could have believed in 1775 that the wilderness would vanish within their lifetime.
They took out the whole forest?
Yep. Pretty much.
With just axes.
I mean, civilization rolled in. You can see it. I mean, look at any place that's rural and nobody's there, and 30 years later, it's subdivisions and houses, and the forest, the area is gone. I mean, you and I have witnessed it. Mm-hmm. Growing up in different places. I remember where we lived out in Oregon City off of Redland Road. We were on 40 acres of land in the middle of nowhere. And there was one or two houses from the highway to where we lived. By the time I was 20, there was houses dotted all the way back. But I remember, you drive 5 minutes. Oh, there's a house. You drive forever. And then, oh, there's one more. There was 3 houses. And fast forward, and there's a house
everywhere,
every 100 yards. So, I mean, in fairness, though, I'm sure the idea that it would become so settled and that it would just sweep through Kentucky and carry on, I'm sure that was not something that Boone really thought possible, or the Indians as well. But, I mean, if you look at the East Coast to the Appalachian Mountains, right? From the East Coast to the Appalachian Mountains, the mountains blocked progress. You can't build on a mountain. You can't just ride your horses you can't put a trail. There's so many things blocking your progression in terms of the mountains, that the civilization was confined from the shoreline. Yeah, like this picture shows, from the shoreline to the mountain range.
There's not that much land to
establish
yourself in.
And then you can see how they could hit south
and go
to Florida and Texas. And there's the Gulf of Mexico and all that. But when you look at that region right there, it's hot and dry. You run out of water in some places. It's not very hospitable, right? No one sees a desert and goes, oh yeah, let's live there. At least in that time frame, right? It's not rich and fertile and easy to have crops and all of that. So the desert is on one end, or the dry land, and it's not rich and fertile. And then above you have, or it's thick and forested like Florida's Everglades. And then you have the mountain range on the other. So land features kept early settlers in certain regions and didn't allow them to move west.
This is why Boone's Trace is a big deal.
But when you look at that map and you see the topography of the Appalachian Mountains and how flat the nation is, once you get past Appalachia all the way to the Rockies, you can see why everything west all the way to Colorado basically just filled up because there's nothing slowing you down. You can cut a road. Just take your wagon, go. There's nothing there to stop you from westward expansion. And when Boone comes across, in fairness, he crosses through Appalachia. He pops through the mountain range. He comes out the other side, and it's just like paradise as far as the eye can see. Also, you got to wonder if you're Boone or anyone else back then, what the hell is beyond that? Like what's next?
Still having it in ocean.
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
That's got to drive that man crazy.
About Montana and Wyoming. Nobody knows about the Indians on that end. Nobody knows about California. Nobody knows about Oregon coast, Tillamook valleys, all that kind of stuff, Willamette Valley. No one knows about any of that yet. And so you have, you do have some people floating around, trying to find their way around, South America all the way to the other side. And you do have some people, Spain kind of takes hold of the West Coast at first. And also California and all the way down to Mexico. And that works until Kit Carson comes along and basically, the West takes it back from inland, from the coastlines of the Spanish. But that's a whole another 100 years later plus. So here we are right now. Boone is popping through, and I want to talk about this just a little bit, because all humans, including myself and you, we have more than one incentive. We have conflicting desires all the time. Like, I want to go out into the wild of Alaska near the Arctic Circle, and I want to just roam and have an adventure and live out there. And then I want to be here with my family in a warm house and not suffer with discomfort and cold at the same time. It's like, I want to experience adventure, and I also want to be also comfortable and warm and safe. And as a person, you're always combating these two sides of trying to balance these two sides of your personality and your drives, right? If you're living life right, you're right there on the edge of chaos. You're not so far into it that you get killed, but you're right there on that line, right? Where you're in, things are chaotic and dangerous, but you're also back there where you're safe and protected, and you're kind of like dancing the line, and so I think Boone, he's thinking, I got to get my family over here. And I got to establish this road, and I got to get myself some land, and I got to build for my future and all of that. I also want to take off by myself and hunt lands that no one has ever seen before, and have it all to myself, and be alone and be able to experience nature in its most virgin, pristine way. I want to live in lands where I got to hide from Indians and also, hunt and all this kind of this adventure side of him, this explorer. And these two things they go against each other. And when it comes to, for example, like I document my hunts, and I share my hunts. I create films, documentary films of my hunts. I went here, I did this, this is what happened, this is how to do it, information, a lot of education, things that maybe are inspiring, things that get you excited, things that I try to incorporate into these films. By nature of producing that, people are going to go out and want to do the same thing. So I want no one to find my hunting spots. I want no one to ever go hunting, and I only want me to go hunting, and I only want me to be able to get the tags and licenses and to be able to go do it. And at the same time, I want to share it with everyone and make everyone value it and value hunting like I do, and protect it and make sure that institution of hunting remains relevant in the modern day and doesn't get infringed upon. Well, these two things go against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so where do you find that balance? Because as I tell people how to hunt, and I educate them on a podcast with gear and equipment and all that, and then I also go out and I do the hunt, and I show them, through my actions, how to get the job done, giving them an idea of how to do it, and also instilling in them the importance and the value of it that I derive from it, then makes them want to go do it. Mm-hmm. And then they go and do it, And then it infringes on the privacy that I want and the opportunities that I want to keep away from all of them. Well, it's like a schizophrenic, set of ideals. And one thing about it is there are two things that you value, but also go against each other.
But don't you think, this is what I've always thought about that argument, is yes, you might lose some opportunities in the short term, but overall, having more hunters and a more demand for animal, I feel would help increase the populations of those animals, and ultimately we'll end up with more opportunities down the line.
I would say at the end of the day, you have to choose, right, an approach. And each approach comes with its downside and upside. If you choose to keep it as secret as possible, okay, and the book's going to allude to this as well. And let's say I never share a hunt again, and I don't do a podcast, and I just hunt for myself quietly and secretly and often nowhere. How much difference will that make? Because guess what? We live in a modern world. The forward progress is coming. If I don't do it, someone else is going to.
And they might not care about it as much as you do and won't do as good of a job.
And at the end of the day, this is exactly what the book is going to touch on, and we're foreshadowing this very thing. Boone has to be thinking, well, if I don't do Boone's trace, if I don't cut the trail, if I don't move my family in, if I don't try to settle Kentucky, well, someone else will. It's like throwing your hands up to be like, I cannot stop the world from being the world. And in one sense, I can't stop all the hunting shows that are out there. I can't stop all the people who create their content around hunting. I can't stop the education, the knowledge, the input that others are all putting. That's an unrealistic and impossible wish, right? And so was stopping everyone from flooding into the West. Impossible wish. That was 900 applicants on the first day they opened the land office in Virginia or Pennsylvania, whatever it was, like in one day. Imagine all the applications for land that happened after that. And all the people are pouring in, whether there's a road or not. Everyone is making their way there. And so if Boone were to say, yeah, I won't do it, I'm not going to enable this thing to happen, well, he might slow it down.
We'd just be talking about some other guy.
But it would just be a little slow. It's going to happen eventually. So in some ways, I do think that, for me, as I create content that sort of undermines and undercuts some of my opportunities, I do think that the silver lining is that, first of all, I think Luther Standing Bear's quote that man's heart away from nature becomes hardened, darker. I think that's true. That means the more people that go into the mountains and experience nature, that hunt, that their attitude toward the world, their heart is softer, their gratitude is greater, their soul is better. So I think in one sense, the more people that go out and hunt and reconnect with nature, the more pure their heart can become. Secondly, I think that the more people who care about it, the more that they actually care about the animals. And they also care about where their food comes from, like all these downstream effects. That means they're going to care more about the environment in a real rubber meets the road kind of way, right? Like people say they care about the environment, but hunters actually put dollar bills into that care. They actually put money into the actual conservation efforts, not just saying it. They do it in a real dollar bill way. And so that benefits the wildlife across the nation. When a politician or a group does want to shut down opportunities, there's so many hunters that value it that it doesn't stand a chance in hell in getting passed. And the dollar bills that are coming in are so great that no state wants to forego the revenue stream as well. So the more people that care about it, the better. And then we have more game. We have more turkeys than we ever had in U.S. history.
I almost hit turkeys every time I tried to go to the grocery store.
We have more whitetail hunting opportunities than ever before. So we have more mule deer opportunities in most states, broadly speaking, than we had in the past. elk especially. There's elk in Kentucky. So,
wow, good for them.
and
I love
they have
that.
tags and hunting opportunities. So you have these opportunities that grow. And as a hunter now, I think that in essence, by promoting hunting in a positive light, we do end up, it's more net good than net bad in the end. And so it causes me to say, okay, I'm going to have a less selfish heart in that regard by being willing to share what fulfills me with other people, even though it might infringe on some of my chances. And competition, I've always never shied away from. Competition makes me better. So the more people that try to do the same thing I do, the more I have to innovate, the more I might have to, try to seek hunting opportunities across 10 states instead of 2. The more I need to be able to hike further, backpack better, have better woodsman skills, better scouting skills, more persistence, more grit, so that I can find success on these, on a yearly basis, So yeah, but this is what Boone is dealing with, that dichotomy, that those two conflicting drives. And so the book continues to say, this is the marked difference between Boone and the other pioneers. He went out to possess. Too many of them went forth to slay and destroy. This was written by W.H. Bogart in 1854. It says, in February 1775, Boone returned from his mission among the Cherokees to his family on the Clinch River. For 18 months, they had been staying in David Gass's cabin. Rebecca and the children began preparing for the second migration to Kentucky. The attempt in 1773 had not been well planned or directed. The journey of 1775 would be much larger, better organized, and funded. The way would be opened and a fort built on the Kentucky River. So the first time they went, that's when his son James was tortured and killed by Indians. And now they're planning. This is 18 months later. The Dunmore's war is over. They're going to move. They're going to do this thing. They got Henderson's money. They're going to do this. So it says, and since the land would have been bought from the Cherokees, the settlers would be safe. That's the theory, because they bought it. Many historians, biographies, and writers have attempted to recreate the scene at Sycamore Shoals in the Watauga in March of 1775. Watauga? I don't know. As many as 1,500 Cherokees were there that day. No doubt both sides thought they were getting a bargain, perhaps swindling the other. At the very least, each assumed they had done well in the negotiations. It's likely that a Cherokee as wise as Atakakula.
Shut up. You just made that out. Let me see it.
It's Atakulakula.
Atakalakula?
Yeah.
That looks Hawaiian, bro.
So we're going to say Atakula.
Atakula?
Kula.
I like
Atakula
Kula.
Kula. Atakula Kula. Anyway, it says that it's likely that the Cherokee, as wise as Atakula, understood Kentucky was going to be overrun by white settlers in any case, and his people might as well get what they could get while the getting was good.
That, or he's like, what are you crazies talking about buying land?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that they knew the writing was on the wall the settlers were just pouring in and the Indians couldn't stop them. Another sucker like Henderson was not likely to show up, so why not take his money? Atakula was a diplomat renowned for pleasing all who could be pleased, so he was a politician, let's say that. And since the transfer of Kentucky lands had already been agreed upon that winter, the whole affair at Sycamore Shoals was more of a ceremonial display than an actual negotiation. The war chief, Okanastota, was not so sanguine as Atakula about the proceedings, and the younger chief, Atakula's son, Dragging Canoe, was angered by the transaction. Dragging Canoe. But a consensus had been reached. See, Dragging Canoe is a lot easier to say than Atakalakalaluka and Akanastastota.
Okay, yes, I agree with you.
I like Dragging Canoe.
But one of those guys sounds like a warrior, and one of those sounds like a disappointment to his father.
But a consensus had been reached, and there was no going back. Among the families camped along the river was a good deal of excitement and expectation. It says no one was sure just how much of the loot any individual would get. The meeting grounds at Sycamore Shoals were near cabins and a fort already built by settlers who had leased some of the Cherokee hunting grounds. These new neighbors of the Watauga Association witnessed and enjoyed the proceedings and celebrations also at the place the Cherokees called the Broken Waters. At a meeting in North Carolina the previous winter, Henderson and his partners had agreed to change their name from the Louisiana Company to the Transylvania Company, reminding all that the new colony was beyond the long-standing barrier of the mountains.
I'm sure that's why there was nothing to do with name changing and dodging taxes.
In the Wilderness Road, Robert Kincaid writes, Colonel Henderson opened the negotiations by inquiring if the Kentucky land which he had sought was actually owned by the Cherokee, a needless formality to give a guise of legality to the affair. The chiefs withdrew for a solemn powwow among themselves. Next day, they reported their conclusions. Without question, they owned the land, they said. The claims of the Six Nations, the Iroquois, were spurious because they never conquered the Cherokee. So the Cherokee own it. So anything that the Six Nations say is BS. The Shawnee had long ago been driven out of the country. It's ours. With so many Cherokees gathered at Sycamore Shoals for the signing, it was a major effort for the Transylvania Company to feed all who had congregated day after day in growing numbers. The Cherokees called Richard Henderson Carolina Dick. A number of interpreters were involved in on the bargaining, as well as Dragging Canoe, and the chief called the Raven and Oconostota. The actual deed of sale gives the amount of payment as for and in consideration of the sum of how much money, Brent? How many pounds of lawful money of Great Britain?
Pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Less than 1,000?
2,000 pounds.
Okay.
But there are reports of as much as 10,000 pounds worth of merchandise given in the bargain. The goods offered in the exchange for land were spread out in tents for the Cherokees to inspect. Later, some Cherokees would claim all the goods were shoddy, cheap blankets, and cheap guns.
And they took it all.
It was reported that no liquor was permitted at the treaty signing, and the chiefs who concluded the agreement would later defend themselves by saying that the young there were tempted by the goods, whatever they were worth, and were so greedy to own them, there was no stopping the sale. Yeah, let's sell this thing. Yeah. Let's get all these guns and cool stuff. There was a great deal of disagreement among the Cherokees about the whole affair. Dragging Canoe in particular opposed the transaction, but was overruled by the majority. Richard Henderson was shrewd enough to know that once all the people had gathered and seen the merchandise he had brought, it was too late for any chief to stop the transaction. It would be too great an anticlimax to return to their villages and leave the guns and blankets and money. Knowing that the Indian Constitution was, yeah, we'll take it, but then we'll also not let you have the land too. Mm-hmm. But the whites just needed an excuse, to move in, a legal pretense to make
we did our due diligence.
Though the discussions among the chiefs and negotiations between Carolina Dick and the Cherokees were lengthy and serious, the element of farce in the proceedings was understood at the time by many, both the buyers and the sellers. They all knew this was like a con. Some Cherokees reminded Henderson that their nation had never claimed land beyond the Cumberland River. Henderson and his partners knew they were acting against orders from the colonial government of North Carolina and Virginia, which is really an extension of the British Empire, and that the document authorizing them to negotiate with Indians was a sham. That was for the Indians of India. For all the heated talk and grand rhetoric, we have to suspect that individuals on both sides were grinning up their sleeves, congratulating themselves on pulling off a coup. But Dragging Canoe was not grinning, Brent. He was not grinning. He could not forget that this act was hastening and sanctioning the destruction of the huge hunting grounds of Kentucky and the rush of settlers across Cherokee lands. Whatever the legal authority and promises of the agreement, there was no denying that the treaty would accelerate the settlement of land in the mountains and across the mountains. The next year, Dragging Canoe would help organize an Indian confederation to vanquish the white settlements west of the mountains. Dun, 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 dun. So on March of 1775, the deed was inked. And Henderson brought the additional land between, and he bought it, basically all this land in between this space and this space of Kentucky. So what's significant about 1775, Brent?
Yeah, 1776 or 75 is when we start the Revolutionary War?
Basically,
or is
yeah.
the year after?
76 is when we write down the Declaration of Independence, I believe, where we declare our independence from England.
We wrote a really sick breakup letter.
Yeah, basically, and said, hey, we declare our independence from you. We are now our own authority. Come and make us change this situation. But really, it kind of started in 1775 when the war really started to kick off. But 1776 is the official written declaration, I believe. So we're right there. This is the beginning of the Revolutionary War. But right now, that's all going on in Boston. You got the Boston Tea Party and you have everything going on with governments. And then out here on the West, you have this whole thing going on where they're just like settling the West and fighting Indians. They're like, yeah, whatever, England, And so which side are these people on? Are they for the British or for the colonial? Like, a lot of them, I think, don't even have a dog in the fight, right? They're just trying to get some land and move west. And
that's most people in conflict with war.
Whoever's in charge when it comes to, the rules of the government, they're on their own anyway. They don't really have a whole lot. It's not like they have a police force from the federal government intervening or supporting or being involved at all in their lives. It's really, survival.
Militia.
It's survival of the fittest out here. Before Boone had left to begin chopping the road through the wilderness and creating Boone's Trace, the chief Atukaluka, who's father of Dragging Canoe, he took him aside and said, "We have given you a fine land," he says this to Boone, "but I believe you will have much trouble in settling it."
That's ominous, sir.
The legend grew that Dragging Canoe had called Kentucky dark and bloody ground at that time, but there is no evidence that he did so. However, he did warn that there was a dark cloud over the country of Kentucky. Even so, all who witnessed the proceedings at Sycamore Shoals remembered the eloquence and authority of Atakaluka Kula. Though tiny in stature, he was a man of great poise and wisdom and a master of English. Pleasant Henderson, another of Richard's brothers, later declared that the little carpenter was the most fluent, graceful, and eloquent orator he had ever heard.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm. So basically, they start chopping their way through the wilderness. Okay, Boone and the crew. And the book goes into, there's tons of chapters and stuff about them chopping, and how hard it was. Keep in mind, it's just a wilderness and craggy, rocky, nasty mountains.
Yeah.
And they just have to make a road. So they're basically clearing trees and trying to make a pack trail for animals to cross and all of that and build something that's permanent. Okay. And so just keep in mind, the book covers this in more detail, and I recommend you get the book to get all those details. We're skipping ahead to this letter that is written on April 1st of 1775. Boone wrote to Richard Henderson, one of the earliest of his letters to have been preserved. It is likely that Will Hayes or someone else in the party helped him draft it. The letter addressed to Dear Colonel reads in part, "After my compliments to you, I shall acquaint you of our misfortune. On March the 25th, a party of Indians fired on my company about half an hour before day and killed Mr. Twitty and his Negro and wounded Mr. Walker very deeply, but I hope he will recover. On March the 28th, basically a month later, as we were hunting for provisions, we found Samuel Tate's son, who gave us an account that the Indians fired on their camp on the 27th day. My brother and I went down and found 2 men killed and scalped, Thomas McDowell and Jeremy McFeeters. I have sent a man down to all the lower companies in order to gather them all to the mouth of Otter Creek." Boone urged Henderson to come as soon as possible to swell their force, for his men were very uneasy. Now is the time to frustrate their intentions and keep the country whilst we are in it, he said. If we give way to them now, it will never be the case. With Henderson was a young man from Virginia named William Calk. He kept the journal of the expedition to Kentucky. Friday, ye 7th of April, this morning is Avery and hard, snowy morning, and will still continue at camp, being in number about 40 men and some Negroes. I can't read his writing. It's bad. This evening comes a letter from Captain Daniel Boone at Kentucky of the Indians doing mischief, and some turns back.
Some turns back?
And some turns back. Like some people turn.
And some turns back.
Some turns back. Yeah.
Great. That's a coherent sentence.
It's all written that way. Capitals, the extra vowels in words. Like, yeah.
Bro, I'm looking up Boone's Trace. Like, you can go hike it right now.
Yeah.
Guess how long the average hike time is to get through Boone's Trace today. You, boots, nothing else.
Nothing else?
Mm-hmm.
How long it takes to hike it?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they're going 2 miles per hour.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 days? A day? 24 hours?
Less than 20 minutes.
Well,
yeah.
it must
So the
be,
whole length of Boone's Trace?
It must be just the gap.
Just the gap, yeah. Just the gap. Like, yeah. Basically, once they, like, got the axemen there and started hacking, it's only 0.08 miles long.
Yeah, what they have today.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm sure it was much longer than that from the settlements to where they settled down in Kentucky. That's just what's
I'm talking about getting through the gap. I would think it would take a day, I would think a really long time to get through a gap.
No, we hiked through passes in an hour or two. Huh. If you're just talking about a mountain pass. Yeah. So, yeah, it says, they need reinforcements because they're like, we're settling this region. We've got a bunch of people here. We're cutting things in, and we're getting hounded by Indians, and they might get bold enough to just overrun us if we don't have more people. Boone later described the attack on March 27 to John Filson, saying they were fired upon by Indians and 2 men killed and 2 wounded. But though taken by surprise, they had not been routed. Out of the dark, the Indians came swinging their tomahawks. Twitty was wounded. His slave and his bulldog were killed. Felix Walker was wounded, but ran with the rest of the party into the woods. As soon as it was clear the attack was over, they returned to the camp. But some of the men were so shaken, they packed their things and headed back to Virginia and North Carolina. They had assumed the treaty with the Cherokees would prevent such attacks. Boone and the remaining men threw together a rough structure they called Twitty's Fort. Twitty himself died after a few days of suffering, but Boone helped nurse Felix Walker back to health. He attended me as his child, cured my wounds by the use of medicines from the woods, nursed me with paternal affection until I recovered, Walker would later write in his account. It was not certain what tribe of Indians attacked Boone's company of axemen. In the aftermath, various groups accused each other. Ted Franklin Blue and the Hunters of Kentucky tells us that Chillicothes accused the Mingos. A few blamed Dragging Canoes Cherokees. There were rumors the Pequots to the north had dug up the hatchet. No one, he said, this is Captain Russell speaking, was sure who had done the killings. The attackers may have been a roving band that included members of various tribes. Whoever they were, the momentum of the project broke and the men were confused and afraid. The weather continued bad, and 2 days after the attack it began to snow. A group had gone out hunting and was attacked and 2 men killed. When Samuel Tate and the other hunters returned to the main camp and told their story, there was more panic. Only Boone's calm good sense of manner and of authority kept things under control. The slave woman saw someone spying on them from the woods and screamed, and there was panic again until the intruder proved to be one of the axemen who had fled into the forest after the first attack. While Felix Walker recovered and the party recouped its strength and will, Boone and a few other men cut away down to the Otter Creek, to the place he and Henderson partners had chosen for settlement on the Kentucky River. It says, the young man would never forget seeing, as they came in sight of the great meadow along the river, hundreds of buffalo. Surprised by the appearance of the road makers heading off from a salt lick and splashing through the stream, such a sight some of us never saw before, he later wrote, nor perhaps may ever again. Walker and many of the other men understood they were glimpsing a world just before it was to disappear, and they themselves were among the instruments of history and of its vanishing. We felt ourselves as passengers through a wilderness just arrived at the fields of Elysium, or at the garden where there was no forbidden fruit.
Could you imagine stepping out of the trees and seeing a buffalo right next to you for the first time, never knowing one was or seen one before?
Just seeing, hundreds of them.
That would freak me out, dude.
Just pristine, untouched land.
I looked up Twitty's fort.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty dope fort. You want to see it?
It's
just a marker. Remember when they said it was made out of twigs and something? Yeah. It didn't last too long. But they put up a marker for it, folks.
Twitty's fort.
Or Little Fort. They didn't want to give Twitty all the credit.
Yeah.
It's the site of the first fort in Kentucky.
So
by Daniel Boone and Party,
mm-hmm.
named for William Twitty, killed by Indians and buried by his slave, Sam, near the fort.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty This is pretty interesting. Pretty soon, we're getting into them now arriving in Kentucky, okay? And where the story goes from here, I really enjoy the next sections because we're kind of slogging through what I find a little bit boring, the political stuff. I want to get back to the mountain adventures, the wilderness stuff. But I really wanted you to understand how the West, how this was occurring, how it was unfolding, you know, this movement to move westward. Boone is now, there's just a small party of them. They've chopped their way in. They got these little dinky forts and now they're going to try to settle there. Now they're sitting ducks, right? Now all sorts of Indians know that they're there. They don't want them there. And they kind of can tell, like, if we don't get rid of these people, more will come. They're just getting started. And what is going to happen here is now Boone is going to be there with a small group of family, his daughters, his wife, you know, others that are trying to like make it. And the Indians are going to start closing in, circling. And this is where Boone really starts to become famous, and the things he does start to really, the things he's legendary for start to unfold. This is where he starts getting captured, set free. He's basically escapes, more narrow escapes, you know. He becomes, instead of getting killed, he becomes adopted by the chief and lives with them for years, and then has to sneak away, or finally gets to sneak away. And, you know, these things kind of, you know, in history, it's like, well, which side were you on, Boone? And it was almost like he was just going, well, whatever, today, I guess this is my new direction, and then I'll go this way.
He had to fight against his adopted father in a battle later on in life, too.
Yes. And so we're about to, it just gets crazy from here on out, pretty much. Also, the Boone his daughter gets kidnapped by Indians.
And he goes full Liam Neeson.
He totally
like full Liam Neeson. I don't even know the story.
Liam Neeson. Yeah, totally. It's crazy. And this is, man, he is a formidable enemy, but he is a kind human being. Like, he doesn't want to kill anyone. But he is someone you can't just easily kill, you know. Anyway, this is going to get interesting. I think we're kind of through the parts you could kind of predict or try to predict what's going to happen now, as far as, you know, as people start to move out west. But the next few sections, they're just out there in the wind, and they're just trying to stay alive. And the Indians are getting bolder and bolder, and they need reinforcements. They need more settlers to come. And in the meantime, you have some going, peace out. Like, These Indians scared the hell out of me, and this ain't worth it. I'll come back in 5 years when you guys have settled.
Yeah. Could you just imagine, like, you come to a place and the local population scalps each other?
Yeah.
That's terrifying. Like, killing someone's one thing. Scalping a human being, it's a whole nother ballgame, man.
Pretty common back then.
I might head back east, too.
Anyway, that's it for today. Tune in next one. We appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. All right, folks. I hope you're enjoying the Dueling Pistols podcast. If you like it, do us a favor and share it with a friend. Help us get this thing to grow a little bit bigger. Tell your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister, your buddy, your uncle.
Go to
your
contacts,
grandpa.
hit select all, send.
Just sell it. Just share it with a friend of yours, somebody, and help us spread the word about the show. Thanks for supporting us. We'll catch you on the next episode.